The year is 1642. A then 39-year-old Dutchman named Abel Tasman was sent to explore unknown southern lands to find new trade routes. During his voyage, he and his crew sailed along the southern coast of Australia, until one day he spotted the very rugged coast of an island. Abel named the island Van Diemen's Land in honour of the governor of the Dutch East Indies. It wasn't for another 150 years that a European would step foot onto the island. It then took another 64 years for the island to be renamed to how we all know it today, Tasmania. It's of course worth mentioning that these weren't the first people to discover Tasmania, as indigenous Tasmanians are believed to have arrived around 40,000 years ago. So now when you hear the word Tasmania, what's the first thing that pops into your head? For me, and maybe some of you watching this video, it's the Tasmanian Devil, a bizarre one-of-a-kind animal found nowhere else on Earth. These creatures once roamed across mainland Australia, but the arrival of dingoes from Southeast Asia along with changing environmental conditions led to the complete disappearance from the mainland. But other than this bizarre creature, what else can be found on this island? What is life like there, and how does it compare to the rest of the country? Let's fly all the way down under and find out. So let's start off by taking a look at where Tasmania is found. So the island is found directly south of Victoria, in the very southeast of mainland Australia, about 240 kilometers away to be exact. So there are two main ways to get to Tasmania from Australia. You can fly directly from major cities like Sydney, Melbourne and Brisbane. Or you can take the more adventurous route and take the Spirit of Tasmania ferry. However, this option does take around 10 hours. So being found pretty close to Victoria, is Tasmania part of this state? Well, no, Tasmania is actually its own state. Out of the 6 states, it's easily the smallest by size and population. So Tasmania is made up out of one main island and then around 1,000 smaller ones surrounding it. Overall, it covers an area of around 68,400 kilometers squared. That's just a little bit bigger than Sri Lanka, the world's 120th largest country. This 68,400 kilometers squared actually ranks Tasmania as the 26th largest island on the planet. This size means that Tassie could fit into Western Australia, the country's largest state, about 37 times. The population of the island is about 575,000. If it were its own independent nation, this would rank them as the 166th most populated. That's just a little bit higher than the population of Malta. So with this population living in a state of that size, this means there are just shy of 9 people per kilometer squared. Which sounds like a very sparsely populated place, which when compared to the countries of the world is completely true. However, when compared to the other states of Australia, it's actually rather densely populated. For reference, the state is about 8 times more densely populated than Western Australia. If I had to summarise the geography of Tasmania, it would be rugged and mountainous, particularly in its western and central regions. It's got a bit of a Western Scotland vibe to it, that somewhat raw and picturesque charm. Within this central western-ish region just mentioned is Mount Ossa, the state's tallest mountain. So with the state being an island, it has a long varied coastline with cliffs, beaches and bays, again resembling something similar to that of maybe Wales or Scotland in the UK. The climate in Tasmania is generally described as cool and temperate with a maritime influence, meaning it gets nice mild summers and pretty cool winters. The west coast is quite wet due to winds from the Southern Ocean, while the east coast tends to be drier and a bit more sunnier. Its summers are generally quite mild, with temperatures between 17 and 23 degrees Celsius, while its winters can be quite nippy with snow on the mountains. So overall, Tasmania has a very pleasant, livable climate, which creates a green, lush landscape, making it very distinct from much of mainland Australia's deserty redness. With Tasmania being one of the southernmost inhabited places outside Antarctica with clear dark skies, it's actually one of the best places on Earth to see the Aurora Australis, that is the southern hemisphere's version of the Northern Lights. Alongside the southern lights, the night sky can be exceptionally good here. Now, if we were to jump into a boat and travel directly east from Tasmania, we'd cross the Tasman Sea before arriving into somewhere on the South Island of New Zealand. If we were to travel directly south, we'd cross the Southern Ocean for a couple of thousand kilometers, before reaching Antarctica, which explains why the waters surrounding Tasmania are so cold, especially when compared to other parts of the country. And if we were to travel directly west, we'd travel over 8,000 kilometers across the Indian and Atlantic Oceans before reaching somewhere in Argentina, Patagonia specifically. And if we were to travel to the antipode of Tasmania, that's the exact opposite point on Earth from a given location, we'd arrive in the middle of absolute nowhere deep in the Atlantic Ocean. Tasmania's geographical position has its drawbacks as well as its positives too, one of those being clean air. Its remote location, low population, vast wilderness, and ocean winds keeps the air extremely pure and fresh from pollution. Certain spots in Tasmania, especially in its national parks and mountainous regions, regularly record some of the cleanest air on the planet. And in fact, its Cape Grim Air Pollution Station recorded the cleanest air ever observed on Earth. Now, when most people think of Australia, one of the first things that comes to mind is its wildlife, especially the kinds that could kill you. Whether that's tiny spiders, snakes, or giant sharks. But with Tasmania being found in a more temperate and remote place, does it have as many deadly animals as mainland Australia? Well, definitely not as many, but there are still some to look out for. One of those being the tiger snake, one of the most venomous found across the entire country. They're responsible for the majority of snake bites across Tasmania. Luckily, the state doesn't have crocodiles, but there are sharks, although extremely rare, great whites can be seen along the shores of the island. So, as mentioned earlier, the capital of the state is Hobart. It's the most populated and famous city. It's most likely the only Tasmanian city that most people have heard of, with a population of around 226,000, nearly half of the island lives within the city's boundaries. The two next most populated cities are Launceston and Devonport, with around 90 and 32,000 people respectively. So Hobart sits in the very southeast of the island and has a very chilled, laid-back, charming vibe to it. Its blend of history and nature gives a somewhat cozy and adventurous feel. Hobart's got this really nice mix of old and new. It has historic sandstone buildings and cobblestone streets right in its city centre. It's a city found on the coast, so it has a charming harbour, a place buzzing with fishing boats and fresh seafood markets. And everywhere you look, Mount Wellington stands tall, watching over the entire city. On the crowdsourced website Numbeo, Hobart has a quality of life score of 208, ranking it 9th in the world. The only thing that really lets the city down is its high cost of living. So each of Australia's states has its own flag. This is what the flag of Tasmania looks like. It's, as you'd imagine, blue with the Union Jack found in the top left corner. And to finish off this video, I'm going to rattle through some weird and wonderful things about the state of Tasmania. So Tasmania is home to the mountain ash tree, the tallest flowering plant on Earth. The tallest measures around 100 meters, that's 4 meters taller than Big Ben. There is a town named Nowhere Else, there is an Eggs and Bacon Bay and a Baghdad. The state has no wild koalas, but it does have kangaroos. And finally, a nickname for Tasmania is the Apple Isle, as it was once one of the largest apple producing regions within the British Empire. So there we have it, Tasmania in a nutshell. Like and subscribe for more content like this, and as always, thank you very much for watching.